Welcome, everyone. My name is K.D. Thompson. I'm a professor of religious studies here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I do research, ethnographic research with Muslims, mostly in East Africa. Today's event is sponsored by the Institute for Regional and International Studies, National Resource Center, and the Middle East Studies Program. The IRIS NRC supports and enhances global awareness and inspires informed thinking about the complexities of our world. We provide resources and expertise to K-12 and post-secondary educators, students, and the community at large. The Middle East Studies Program seeks to foster knowledge of the Middle East, its past and current economic, social, cultural, and political developments. The Middle East Studies Program seeks to facilitate teaching, learning, research, and public awareness of the diverse array of Middle Eastern languages, cultures, and peoples that make this region so unique. My colleague, Essie Lynchner, will be providing tech support. If you have any challenges, please use the chat function to contact her. We will be recording today's event and sharing the link in a post-event email. You will only show on the recording if your microphone is turned on to speak during the Q&A. As our speaker is talking today, you can start entering your questions into the chat for the Q&A portion. And when we get to that part, I will either call on you to read your question out loud, or if you prefer not to speak, I'll read it out loud for you. The University of Wisconsin-Madison occupies ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Dejope since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed, when both the federal and state government repeatedly but unsuccessfully sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. Our speaker today, Deborah Ellis, is an award-winning author and peace activist. She penned the international bestseller, The Breadwinner, as well as many works of fiction and nonfiction about children all over the world. She has won the Governor General's Literary Award, the Ruth Schwartz Award, the Middle East Book Award, Sweden's Peter Pan Prize, the Jane Addams Children's Book Award, and the Vicky Metcalf Award for a body of work. She donates most of her royalty income to worthy causes, such as the Right to Learn Afghanistan, Street Kids International, the Children in Crisis Fund of the International Board on Books for Young People, and UNICEF. Please join me in welcoming Deborah Ellis.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Please go ahead, Deborah.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I'm really honored to be able to be with this group to talk about The Cat at the Wall. It's an interesting time that we live in a very disturbing and distressing time. And to be able to talk about it in the context of a children's book is quite an honor. So thank you for having me. The Cat at the Wall is a 10-year-old book. It was published 10 years ago. And I want to take us back 10 years before that to 2004, when I published this book, which is called 3 Wishes. It's interviews I did with children in Israel and in Palestine at that time. So this was like 20 years ago. And it kind of sets the context a little bit for The Cat at the Wall. The front piece to the book says, in World War I, 15% of all casualties of war were civilians. In World War II, 50% of all casualties of war were civilians. And in 2004, 90% of the casualties of war are civilians. I wonder if anybody will do a survey now and find out if that number has changed. We're living at a time where machines are doing our killing, and it just seems to be, death seems pretty indiscriminate. So I interviewed a bunch of kids at that time on both sides of the conflict, And I want to read just a couple of interviews with a couple of the great kids I met. First is a girl named Nora. She's 12 years old. She was 12 years old at the time. And I met her at the Princess Basma Rehabilitation Center for Disabled Children on the top of Mount Olives in Jerusalem. And this is what she had to say. I am from Biat Safafa in the south of Jerusalem in Palestinian territory. I am a Palestinian. I have 3 brothers, but no sister. I wish I did have a sister. I sometimes think about all the things we could do and talk about. If she were close to my age, we would wear each other's clothes. Then it would be like we had twice as many clothes. My brothers are nice, but they are all younger than me and they can be very noisy. They bother me sometimes. Of course, I bother them right back, but because I'm the oldest, I'm supposed to be better behaved. At least I have my own room. Pink is my favorite color, so I have a lot of pink in my room. I love my brothers, but they can sometimes give me problems, like the day I went out to shop by myself. I was born with something wrong with my legs. I've always been in a wheelchair. I get around in the chair just fine. The wheels are like my legs. I'm not supposed to go out by myself because my mother thinks I won't be able to move fast enough if the soldiers come. There are a lot of soldiers where I live. They watch us all the time. We can't do anything without being watched by them. They carry guns and they give me nightmares. We would like them to go away, but they don't care about what we want. The soldiers are always around, but sometimes they move into the streets, and then everybody runs to get out of their way. If they feel like shooting, they will just go ahead and shoot. They don't care if they shoot at a child or at an older person. My mother is afraid they will shoot at me for not getting out of their way fast enough. I think I could throw stones like other children and still get away quickly, but I can't throw stones if I'm with my mother. The streets aren't always smooth, though. Sometimes there are a lot of rough places where the army has blown something up. I can't move my chair on my own over places like that. Someone has to push me. My mother doesn't allow me to go out by myself, but I went out anyway one day when she wasn't paying attention. It was fun to be out by myself. I felt scared that she would catch me, but it was an adventure too. I felt brave and scared at the same time. I went to a little shop not far from our house. I bought some chewing gum. My mother doesn't like me to have chewing gum, but I like it, so that's what I bought. I made it back home without being caught. Everything would have been fine, but then I told my oldest brother what I had done. I wanted to brag, I guess. My brother thinks he's so great. I should have known better. He went and told on me to my mother. She lectured me in front of him about how I should be smarter than that and set a good example for my younger brothers. I didn't like that, but I did like the gum. I'm usually late for school, but that doesn't have anything to do with me being in a wheelchair. There's a van that goes to the Palestinian towns and camps and picks up kids like me to come to the school here. We're supposed to be let through the checkpoints because we have a special permit. Even if there is a curfew on, we are supposed to be able to get through, but the soldiers always hold us up. Even if they know us, even if they see the same faces every morning, they still ask for our identification papers. They count all the kids and ask us a lot of questions. They don't care if we're late for school or not. Many of the kids in my class come late. School is supposed to start at 8:30, but kids come in at all times during the morning. It's hard to concentrate with kids coming in all the time. The teachers are often late too. We're celebrating Ramadan now. We fast during the day. Not all Palestinians are Muslims, but my family is. At the end of Ramadan, we celebrate Eid. Oh, Eid is a wonderful holiday, and I can't wait. First, I will go to the mosque with my mother, and we will pray together. Then we will go visit other members of our family. We can't go visit my grandparents, though. They live in a town in the West Bank, and the Israelis won't let us go through the checkpoints to visit them. They live so close to us, just a few miles, but they might as well live far, far away. That's what would make me the happiest, to see my grandparents again. I haven't seen them in over 2 years. I don't know any Israeli people other than the soldiers, and they are all very mean and very tough. The children are probably the same as the adults. They might be nice like me at the beginning, but then they would change. They want our land, and that makes them mean. I know there are other children in the world who suffer a lot. They get shot at even more than we do, and they get sick and go hungry. Someday I'd like to do something to help them. If I had 3 wishes, I would become a doctor, and I would be famous, maybe as a writer, and I would be able to walk. And the next interview I'm going to read you is from an 8-year-old girl. I met her in the McDonald's in the West Bank in Jerusalem. West Bank or East Bank? I can't remember which is which. Anyway, her name is Jilly, and she's 8 years old. I am in grade 3. My best subject is art. I love to draw, especially horses. I like to paint pictures too. I don't have any brothers or sisters. I was born in the Ukraine, but I was adopted when I was 2 months old and brought to Israel. I don't know anything about the Ukraine, except that it gets very cold there. There's special Ukrainian food too, but it doesn't really have anything to do with me. I'm Israeli, and that's what I feel like. Horses are my favorite thing. I ride horses at a farm near Jerusalem. I wish I could do that every day because I would rather ride horses and be around horses more than anything else. I want to have my own horse and be a veterinarian or a professional rider when I grow up, so I can be around horses as much as I want to. And my very, very special dream is one day visit all the horse farms in the world. I hear a lot about the war. I'm 8, which is not too young to know about war and bombs. We have guards at our school to keep the Palestinians from blowing us up. One of the guards there was killed by a bomb. He wasn't killed at our school, but somewhere else. I was very sad when I heard about it. I was afraid too. Guards are supposed to be able to protect us, but he couldn't even protect himself. If a bomb can kill a guard, it could also kill me or my family. There's always a lot of talk about war. I have my own gas mask. All the kids at my school have one. This way we can still breathe if someone drops gas on us. There should be gas masks for horses too. I don't like to think about the war. I like to think about horses. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want anybody to hurt me. I just want to ride horses. Sometimes a long time can go by and I can forget about the war. I have a very nice life and I can laugh and be with my friends. And then it's like there's no war. And something happens like a bus blowing up and I have to think about it again. I don't have a horse of my own. I keep asking my mother if I could keep one in my bedroom and she always says no. I do have a little dog though named Blackie. The thing that makes me happiest, other than horses, is playing with Blackie. The thing I'm most afraid of is that I'll fall off a horse. I don't know if there are any Palestinian girls who love horses as much as I do. I don't know any Palestinian girls. I think about God sometimes. I know God exists. I can feel it, and I know everything will be all right. So that those interviews were done just as the wall was being built. It was being talked about and planned, but it hadn't been built yet. And I went back 10 years after that to do interviews with people to find out how the wall had changed their lives. That was the original thought of what I was going to do. And I met with a whole bunch of people, and the interviews I did were like incredible because they're incredible people. But I couldn't get a sense of hope out of the interviews. And when you're writing for young people, I believe you always have to be able to have a book with at least some sense of hope at the end, that things could get better or people have a bit more strength or resilience at the end. And I couldn't find any when I was there. Maybe I was just looking in the wrong place, maybe the faults of my abilities as an interviewer, but I couldn't make sense of what was going on. It just seemed really, really bad. So I wrote The Cat at the Wall as a way to try to make sense out of what I was seeing and hearing. And I heard these incredible stories of people in just mind-blowing situations. One of them was called, I think it was called A Straw Widow, where Israeli soldiers would go into the West Bank and be in people's homes and just kind of move into the home and take over a floor and the Palestinian family would be there at the same time, and these Israeli soldiers would be there using their home as like an incredible situation to put people in, both Israelis, both Palestinians. And so I was using that extraordinary situation to try to figure out a way to explain what was going on to kids. And so The Cat at the Wall is a result of that. Main characters are people who end up together in this little house and what happens to them and how they try to navigate their way through it. 10 years on, we're now in a situation that's even more difficult to understand than it was 10 years ago, certainly 20 years ago. And the question that keeps coming into my head, both from this conflict, from the Ukrainian conflict, from the other things that are going on around the world, is how do we tell this to children? How do we tell them that the world has evolved? We have let the world evolve into a place where some people can do pretty much whatever the hell they want to do, and there seems to be no consequences. The rule of law, decency, I don't even quite know what to say, how to describe it, but the normal social contract of, there's just no stopping place. There seems to be no stopping place now. And so when we talk to children about these situations, I think we need to be really honest about where we have screwed up and where it can possibly go from here, and how we can maybe get ourselves out of it and back onto a track where we're not so polarized and so blindly killing one another. So as a children's writer, I know that my abilities to influence things are limited, but I also think that the things that we do matter. The small things we do, the big things we do, how we treat each other matters. And if the next generation is able to get a sense of that, of how we can treat each other better, and how each time we do that, it kind of makes the bigger picture better. I'm open to hearing anybody else's ideas on this, because sometimes I come up kind of flummoxed. So that's all I prepared for today, because really, I'm kind of beside myself on where we're going to go from here. So I'm looking forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you, Deborah. While we give folks a few minutes to write their questions in the chat, could you maybe summarize the book a little bit more for those of us who haven't had a chance to read it yet?
Sure. It's kind of a complicated story in some ways. It's different from what I've usually written. There's a girl in the book who gets hit by a car, and she lives in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and she dies and comes back to life inside the body of a cat in Bethlehem, Palestine. And she was kind of a pain in the ass kid when she was alive as a girl, as a human girl. And as a cat, she doesn't know what the heck's going on. She has no concept of what's going on around her. And she's running through Bethlehem and trying to escape the other cats and find a place where she can hide up for a while. And there's soldiers who are coming into this house to take it over. And she runs between their legs and hides under a couch. And she is there with these soldiers while they are taking over this house, and they find a little boy who's autistic hiding under the floor, in a safe compartment where his parents have left him when they had to go out to do some other chores. And so it's about what happens to these people while they are stuck together in this house.
I was wondering if you could go back to the first set of interviews that you shared, and talk about kind of just how you got interested in Israel and Palestine in the first place, or your first trip there and what that was like.
Yeah, I had done a couple of trips to Pakistan to meet with Afghan refugees, and I hadn't thought about going to Israel and Palestine, and then my publisher asked me to, and so I thought, I'm not saying no to nothing. So I went, and it's a spectacular place with incredible people doing things and trying to build bridges and trying to just do incredible things. So I was blown away by that, and as I was blown away by the way people are trying to stretch the boundaries of thought there to try to move things in better directions, and how difficult they're finding it. But it's a pretty special place.
Do we have a question in the chat from Tila? Do you want to unmute?
Hi, I was wondering what the reaction has been to your book from both sides of the conflict. Both sort of Israeli, Palestinian, etc.
When the book of interviews came out, there was there's a lot of positive reaction and some negative reaction too. Parents and adults in general, I think, get kind of squeamish around children learning about the kind of world that we have allowed to be created. So I got some feedback from parents who didn't want their kids to know about the war in the Middle East. They didn't want to have that conversation. I got the same feedback around the Breadwinner and other books I've done. I can't remember what the feedback was with The Cat at the Wall, if there was specific feedback among Israelis and Palestinians. It was well received, but I don't remember the feedback around it. My feeling about what should be in children's literature is that if we're going to subject children to something in real life, then we shouldn't be squeamish about writing about it in their literature. And if we're squeamish about it, then we shouldn't be doing it. But not everybody feels that way. And I'm not a parent. I fully admit that if I were a parent, perhaps I would have a different perspective on it. But that I don't. That's my perspective.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about your interview process, doing interviews on both sides. I'm an interviewer myself for academic work, but I wondered specifically about the languages that you were able to use, if you had a translator, and how that impacted your work, and then how you went from turning these, real stories that you collected from people into a fictional story.
Yeah, all I speak is English, which is kind of embarrassing for a Canadian. We're supposed to be bilingual. Yeah, wherever I go, and I've done like a number of these kinds of interview books, I will sit and talk with anybody who's prepared to sit and talk with me. And sometimes I use an interpreter, or I'll hire somebody, or if they speak English, then that's fine too. Whatever works for them. And I always explain who I am and what I'm doing, what's going to happen to their words, what's going to happen to the money generated from their words. And so they always have the ability to say, yes, I want to do this, or no, take a hike. And either one is fine. And there's something, as you know, very special about being trusted with a little bit of someone's story. And there's also a great dignity in seeing our stories reflected on paper, because once you put it into print and on paper, there's a real, like, this happened, it's important that people know about it. What you went through is real. You should be honored for having gone through that. So I think that's important. And the more of these kinds of stories we can get out there, I think the better it is. We need to understand the consequences of our decisions. And if our decisions are to allow our governments to go to war, we need to own those consequences and say, yeah, I killed that kid. I'm responsible for that death because I allowed my government to do it.
And can you talk about the second part of my question, how you went from turning these stories into fiction?
Thanks, I forgot about the second part.
I mean, you touched a little bit on why you did that, but I'm curious about the process.
Yeah, the process is kind of a mystery to myself as well. What do I do? Okay, so I have this image in my head all the time of a big tower that's got no doors in it, and I walk around and around and around and around it until somehow there's a door and I can go in the door. And that door could be either a character speaking to me in my head, or a situation that sparks an idea for like a plot or a story, or like usually a question I have, like, what is it like to be in this situation? And then one thing comes after another from that. So I can't, I probably saw all the cats in Jerusalem, which is maybe why we made a cat in The Cat in the Wall.
But like, did you end up using, what did you do with the interviews then?
Yeah, I sent them to my
incorporate them
publisher.
into the story?
Oh, sorry. I sent the interviews, I typed them up in a book format, and I sent them to my publisher, and they had the same reaction I did, that there was there was nothing in the interviews that could leave the kids with a feeling that, yeah, things might get better. So they didn't publish it. But yeah, it's lucky they published the novel instead. It really varies, because sometimes the interviews are really valuable in giving people an understanding of what's going on. And sometimes people can understand things better through a story and how a story unravels, and they can put themselves into that situation. So different things work for different people in that way.
Thank you. I see a question from Essie in the chat. Essie, do you want to unmute?
Sure. Just following up on Sela's question about feedback and reactions to the book, I'm curious if you recall any feedback from young people, from kids, and how maybe they have responded, and or teachers. And I hope we'll get some of that feedback in the chat as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, great response from kids. Kids in schools who were either from Israel or from Palestine would read them and say, yeah, this was my experience, or I know somebody who went through that. And it kind of opened the door to talk about their own experience, which is like fantastic. Teachers, I think teachers really like the interview formats. It gives great scope for discussion. They're often not too long and can easily be like brought forward into a class and talked about, and all kinds of amazing discussions can come from that. So I got great feedback from kids and great feedback from teachers.
I see Patty has her hand raised. Patty, would you like to unmute?
There we go. Okay, let me get this off screen. I've read several of your books. One, I believe you did on children reacting to an illness in South Africa.
Oh, yes, thank you. At the Heaven Shop, maybe.
Yes. But my question here is, I was in Israel, Palestine in 1973 during the October War, but we were only on the West Bank and parts of northern Israel. What my question is for you now, or for your book, is were you interviewing and writing about children in the West Bank, or did you ever get to Gaza?
You know, I never got to Gaza. No, one of my regrets, I never got there. When I did the interviews, I was primarily around Jerusalem, a little bit in Ramallah and Bethlehem, for 3 Wishes. I went a little bit further afield in Israel and the West Bank for the second trip I was there, but it was, no, I never got to Gaza. That would have been something.
When I was there, the people in the West Bank said it was very unpleasant to live in Gaza. And there was a division in their mind between them in the West Bank and those people that were in the area of Gaza.
I think there's probably less and less division now, right? As we don't hear a lot about what's going on in the West Bank now, but what we hear sounds pretty bad. I think it's got to be so difficult to be there right now.
I have one question someone sent me in the chat about the book itself. They write, the protagonist, Claire, experiences a unique transformation by seeing the world through the eyes of a cat. Why did you choose this perspective, and how do you think it helps young readers relate to the story's themes?
Yeah, my best memory of why I chose that is when I saw all the cats in Jerusalem, which are awesome. And the second is that there's this desire to be a fly on the wall, to be able to be someplace and just observe it and try to make sense out of it without affecting the situation. And as a cat, you can observe things. So my thinking about the cat, best as I can recall, was that the cat then became the fly on the wall in this situation, who knows nothing. And she is trying to make sense of what's going on while it's going on. Just as probably the readers, or possibly the readers, who might not know a lot about that situation, are trying to make sense of it as they're getting into the story. So for me, the cat was almost like a tour guide into this very strange situation.
Yeah. I wonder, I imagine it'll be a long time before folks in the West can go back to that region. But since we're getting more news now than probably we have in the US ever before, if you have any plans to write another story and what kinds of themes you might include. I mean, I
Another
was
story.
interested, another story about this conflict or what people there are going through. I mean, I was really struck by what you said about having trouble finding a strain of hope in this, and that seems even less likely now.
At some point, this situation will come to an end of however that looks like. And the people who have been living through it on both sides of the conflict will be, I hope, writing their own stories. So I don't plan to write another story in that section, but I would love to do something to support other people being able to write their own stories, because I think that is super important right now. We need to know what that was like and what happened and how they felt about it. And yeah, thank you. I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna write that down and find out a way, either maybe through IBI or something, to find a way to help to assist people to do that work, because that's really important work that needs to be done.
Hoping folks in the audience will have some more questions.
Mhm.
I guess one that I'm thinking about, and I don't know if you can address this. I know for university instructors, this has been a challenging time to teach about these issues, that especially outside of UW, we're hearing a lot of stories in the news about faculty who are being punished for even mentioning Palestine in their classes. I don't know if the same kind of challenges are being found at the middle school level, but I'm curious if you could speak to that at all, or maybe give any advice to teachers who are thinking about using your book about how they could handle those challenges if they're arising for them.
Yeah, I'm sure middle school teachers face incredible challenges around this. We've been hearing about the book bannings that are going on in the States, and the incredible pressure on librarians and teachers to be so selective on what they bring to children. We're all just vibrating right now. And there's some of that in Canada. I don't think we've quite gotten to where you guys are down there, but we're heading in that direction. I think there's some teachers who are going to be in a position to be able to act with more outright courage on this than others. Teachers who rely on the job and who can't get fired and so forth. That's going to be a bit more difficult for them. But I think if we talk about it in terms of people's lives stories, what have they gone through? What does it mean at a really micro level to lose things because of the conflict, to lose a person or access to a home, or to lose the ability to go to dance class, or to ride your bike through the street. I mean, things like that. It can help us to understand exactly what war does and what war is. And then if we can figure out why war is, and what we have done, how we have built a society that encourages war, how we have built a world where arms manufacturers can make a huge whack of money creating these things that have no purpose other than to kill people. Why that is allowed? Why do we let that happen? And I think we need to have those discussions as a bigger discussion. And if we can't do it focused on what's going on in Israel, Palestine for a variety of reasons, then teachers could do it on a bigger scale and a smaller scale at the same time. What does war do to a child's individual day-to-day life? And in a bigger picture, how have we ended up here and what can we do to stop it? What do we need to teach our children to be able to live in a world without war? How do we define what that looks like? What kinds of skills do we need? How do we learn truth from lies, especially in this world where, oh my gosh, you take a photograph and then you can put a person into the photograph that wasn't even in there when you took the photograph. How do we, oh my gosh, it's so complicated now. And maybe that is the key, or one of the keys, is to underscore how complicated things are. There are no simple answers. There are no simple enemies. There are no simple one side or the other. There are many, many sides and many, many things twirling around in our world. And we need to appreciate the complications of it and respect that and just try to like dance our way through it as best we can, to be as kind to one another as best we can.
Thank you. Yes, someone wrote in the chat that your question, what do we need to teach our children in order to live in a world without war, is a really great question. I would add, I'm not sure about middle. I have two kids, one in elementary school and one in middle school, but I think the elementary school one could actually teach adults quite a bit about that. The middle schooler has become a bit more jaded, but there's another question in the chat that I'll just read aloud. Do you believe that development and increase of social media will create a sense of hope for youth in these environments?
The stuff I've seen coming out of people who are young people is really like fabulous. There's this sense of connection, sense of ability to think different things than the old ways of thinking and create things into the things that other generations have gotten hung up on, such as being gay or straight. It's like, who cares? They don't care. Kids don't care. It's just like, do you like this person? Groovy. If not, fine, go away. But things like that have gotten other generations so like knickers in a knot don't seem to be a big deal to a lot of young people today. And I find that incredibly encouraging. Also, the fact that they recognize that the mistakes that our generations have made are now on their shoulders, and they're kind of pissed about it, which they have every right to be. And there seems to be a determination to turn that around. Like, okay, get out of our way. We'll fix it. Just go away. And that's fantastic. So what we can do to support them is to ask what they need from us and then do it and get out of their way. Because there's some really cool stuff going on, and that gives me hope. That gives me hope.
Essie has her hand raised, and then, or should we go to Sarah first and then Essie?
Yes. Sarah, if you don't mind raising your hand again, then I can.
Yeah. Sarah Koniasny?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not shy. Nothing about me is shy. But let me tell you, meeting you in this way, I am so humbled at this moment. I started, as you continue talking, I was like, oh, this is one cool lady. I bet I would love to go hang out with her. But I think I'm just completely intimidated. I'm certainly not a shy person at all. But I went and started looking at your books because I read one of the Breadwinners. I had no idea there were all of these. And this is my 28th year of teaching in Milwaukee, and I taught predominantly in African American schools. And then I moved to the other side of town as a teacher, not as a person. And so I started working with children from South American countries. And now I've been at a school now for 8 years of predominantly refugees. And so I went to look up your books because you keep referencing them and other people are referencing them. And I'm completely overwhelmed by how much I have not read. And I'm a reader, and I'm a kids book reader, and I'm a bring stuff into your face. But I think Malala is the closest that I've come to bringing anything that you've written. And I'm looking at their faces going, I have students that look like these beautiful little children. And I feel like I'm going to be reading a lot more because there are so many books that I feel like I'm so far behind. And the fact that, I mean, your first one that I see is 1999. And the fact that I have missed all of that and I have been teaching during that time is embarrassing and humbling to know that you have been in this incredible world doing this amazing work that we need to bring to our kids. And I do think you're right. I do think, how do you bring it, right? What can they actually bite and taste and not spit out of fear or out of whatever? But I'm so excited about all of these titles that I'm writing down and the faces on these books. And I'm going to see what local libraries have, and then I'm going to go to another level. But I just think, when they ask who is the one person you would like to meet, I never knew that I'd like to meet you. And I would love to sit and just listen to you. I mean, talking about breakfast is probably more exciting. You can just pick a country. I don't care what country. And you could just, I would just love to listen to you because I'm looking at all the different people and the stories over decades. And you have so much to share. And I want to thank Iris. I want to thank, you guys for introducing me to her, but oh my goodness, you're amazing. And thank you for all this hard work. And I will understand better the depths of it as I start digging into this pile of books that I'm writing down. But thank you so much for your work. And I'll ask more questions if you want, but I'm just so excited to meet you and to see how I have been so out of your world. So I'm excited to jump in and start learning some more stuff, but I will be starting with The Cat at the Wall. But thank you so much for your work and your efforts and your courage. And I love that you said, if they don't want to talk to me, that's okay. I was like, how beautiful is that? Like saying where their words will go. Because I think just in talking to my students and the kids who have escaped wars, we have Rohingya populations and we have very different Karen and Hmong populations, and to hear their stories just from the kids' point of view of like listening to the American kids go, you ate a dog? You ate a cat? And the kid looked at them quite unmoved, saying, I was hungry. And it just makes me think, like, when I hear you saying, how do we bring it to the kids? Yes, there's so many things we can't bring to the kids because of their parents. But these kids feel it. They breathe it. They can share it at any other time without a teacher being in charge of it. I almost want to like plant letters that they, notes or whatever that they, I wonder where this note came from. And it wasn't me. And then they go talk about it, because if I'm in charge of it, I might get in trouble. But yeah, you're right. How do you bring it safely when the kids are already talking about it? So thank you. I went on and on, but I'm not shy. I'm just excited and overwhelmed in all of my ignorance.
Well, thank you for your incredibly kind words. I deeply appreciate that. And I don't know what the mechanics are in this, but if you want to email me, if you can give her my email address, I'd be happy to write to your kids, write to your students, like whatever. I mean, that would be really cool. And next time I'm in Milwaukee, I'll come to your class.
Thank you. Essie did put the link to your website in the chat. So if anyone hasn't seen that yet, please take a look after the event is over. Essie, you had your hand up earlier. Did you still want to ask
Well,
something?
I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for everything Sarah just said. So thank you so much for this. Touching on one of the things that Sarah mentioned, I think a lot of folks are intimidated to even bring up Israel-Palestine because of like, oh, I don't know anything, and there's so much to know. I don't think anyone is necessarily knows everything is the other piece. So I'm curious, I would love for folks to feel comfortable discussing it, even in their ignorance, which, so I thank you again, Sarah, for sort of pointing that out and everything you said there. I guess, what are your thoughts on how educators can feel comfortable and non-educators feel comfortable kind of introducing the topic and or your books, even if they don't know all the things that they think they ought to know? Like, what is how can folks get comfortable with that kind of uncertainty?
How do we get uncomfortable with uncertainty? That's a tough question. We like certainty, and there's not much that's certain about this situation other than that a lot of people are in pain. Maybe that's how you approach it. Where your uncertainty, where the fact that you don't know all the answers. Try to give some historical context for how this evolved, that it's not just like it came out of a lot of pain from a lot of years. And maybe try to get your kids to imagine how things could be better. So I didn't catch the name of the previous person from Milwaukee, but both of these callers have interesting things to say about how to get this into classrooms. So if you have students who are from different places, or even just the same place, they could all talk about things like what makes you scared, like, or what makes you happy, what, those kinds of things, because those are human things. Those are human universal things. And when we talk about things that when we admit to being uncertain and how we are uncomfortable with being uncertain, then kids can admit to being uncertain and know that uncertainty is a state that a lot of us, we live in right now, and it's not a bad state. When we are absolutely certain of something, that's when we get our guard up, and sometimes things can go very badly wrong. But when we're uncertain, it means that we're still open to questions. We're still open to looking at things and learning new things. I think uncertainty is probably the best state we can be in right now.
Leila, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, this was a little bit more of a comment. I was wondering if you knew about We Are Not Numbers. It's an organization based in Gaza, I believe. I'm not sure if it's in the West Bank, but there's a website that I would love people to know about. You can just go We Are Not Numbers, and it's young people in Gaza writing about their lives. And what I love about it is, instead of saying, 40,000 Palestinians have been killed or whatever the number is, it's like each person, each one of those numbers is a human. And also just, I wondered if teachers have ever thought or done pen pal projects, the idea of just sort of reaching out to people in other countries. Anyway, I think that's about it. Yeah.
So the website is We Are Not Numbers.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for telling me about that. I got to check that out.
Deborah, what are you working on now?
Well, I'll just do a brief commercial for the new book. Here it is. It's called The Outsmarters. And it's about a girl. It's a novel. It's about a kid who needs to raise some money or earn some money. And she opens a philosophy booth on her front lawn, and that changes the trajectory of her life. So it's called The Outsmarters, and it's just come out. And I just finished another collection of short stories today. I just sent it to my editor. So that's what I'm working on now.
Great, congratulations. Is there anything that we should have asked you that you would like to talk about that didn't come up yet?
I think I'd like to just reiterate the power of storytelling and stories, and getting kids to hear stories from other places and to tell stories about their own lives, and just to talk to each other is like incredibly important and very, very powerful. And I would also like to express my absolute admiration for teachers and educators in the United States. You guys do incredible work. I get letters from kids that show a real depth of understanding about what's going on in the world, and that's down to you guys. So hats off to all of you, and my thoughts are with you as we go into the next stage of whatever's going to happen.
Thank you. Well, I want to close by thanking everyone who came today. Thank you to our sponsors, IRIS and the Middle East Studies Program, and thank you so much to Deborah. I hope everyone here can at least silently join me in thanking you. Or
Thanks,
feel free
everybody.
to write in the chat. And I hope all of you will also follow up with Deborah's website that was in the chat as well. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.